As someone who is born and raised in Japan, someone who has an aggression history, I think it's mandatory for us to learn about Palestine, learn about our history, and stand against colonialism.
俺たちの人権、日本人の人権が
We're like a puppet of the United States government. Those weapons are killing children, people.
I hope people in Palestine and in Israel have the right to speak up and to freely talk about their future.
Free Palestine! Free Gaza! Free Gaza!
Why do you come down to the protest today?
So I started joining this particular demonstration since the end of October. I've known about what's happening in Palestine since 2014 when I started to join organizing and social justice. And as someone who is living in 2023 and 24, witnessing what we're witnessing on social media and whatnot, I think my answer would be why not? As someone who is born and raised in Japan, someone who has an aggression history, I think it's mandatory for us to learn about Palestine, learn about our history, and stand against colonialism.
It's often told that Japanese people, and especially young people, don't really know about the history of the wartime aggression. Is that true in your opinion?
It is true that not many people know about Japanese history because we're not taught that in school. And as someone who is privileged enough to be able to speak English, which is another colonizer's language, I have access to much broader information. So I think it's my responsibility to translate it to Japanese and spread it to other Japanese people as well.
When you were growing up here, did you feel like it was not talked about? Like, why these particular issues?
It's just my personality. I was born and raised in Japan, but for some reason I had a really strong sense of justice growing up. So my family couldn't handle it. They were like, oh, we gave birth to a foreigner, although back then I didn't even speak English at all. So I think there's a peer pressure culture, of course, you may have heard. People don't want to disturb the surface of, what looks seemingly calm.
Do you think many people know about what's going on today?
I hear from my Japanese friends that I'm the only account that shares about Palestine and what's happening in Gaza right now on their timeline. So the general feel would be, oh, I didn't know about it. Not many people post about it. And even if they hear about what's happening, they don't want to do a deep dive into it because that is too depressing for them. I feel like many Japanese people, they have really low tolerance against suffering that's happening elsewhere. I work in a Japanese company, for example, and people know about what's happening in Gaza because it affects the economy. But they may not know about the history, or they may prioritize the economic impact over justice or even ceasefire, you know what I mean?
Well, I've been joining these protests since October, mid-October, I want to say. And it does feel like, sometimes all you can do is doom scroll on your phone and scream at the world on your phone. But sometimes you have to, change that into physical action, whether that's joining protests, giving speeches, listening to speeches, or, taking direct action. And so I am a cautious optimist, I would say. So part of me is like, well, I don't know if this will lead to anything, but another part of me is like, I can't just sit home and do nothing. So that's the short end of it.
Any particular reason why this particular issue?
It's been quite a while. Ever since I found out about, the brutal occupation that's been ongoing for 75 years, I can't look away from it now. And obviously right now with the ongoing genocide, time is of the essence. And the more we wait, the more people die. I think Palestine is not just something that you should be interested in if you're from Palestine or the surrounding areas, but it's a human rights issue. And Palestine's freeing us also. I also learned a lot about what my own government's doing, what our history is like.
So you were born in Japan?
Yeah, I was born and raised here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's your general consensus about how Japanese people feel about this particular issue?
I feel like, unlike, let's say, the States or the West, where you would see a lot of flags, whether it's like a conservative flag or, a liberal flag or whatever, it's very normal for like the West to be open about their political stance or position or beliefs. Whereas in Japan, I think you never really see flags anyways. Like you don't really see the Japanese flag, first of all, being flown around. So I think a lot of people are more like, they keep to themselves. So it's very hard to tell who's with or who's against this issue. For the most part, I think people are vaguely aware of it. but not to the extent that I would like them to be. The news is obviously biased. They still call it the Israel and Hamas war, first of all. So I think the wording, the language surrounding it already is like biased. So for the most part, I think the consensus is like they're vaguely aware. Not a lot of them are pro-Israel though. Like I haven't really met anyone who's pro-Israel. And also the Japanese government has given aid to Gaza, but at the same time, they're not very open about their stance against Israel. So where do you actually stand? And I think Japan, for most issues, they want to be neutral. They want to be in the middle ground because they have relations with both Israel and Arab countries. I would like for them to be more proactive and more open and voice their opinions, but we're like a puppet of the United States government, so it's kind of hard, I think. So Japan is notorious for being very hush-hush about its war crimes. And even in Japan, too, the consensus is very, oh, Japan was the victim. Japan is always the victim and forever will be the victim. Because, look, we got bombed, which is true. And, you know, civilian lives were lost. That's very true. But at the same time, we don't really talk about Japan as like an imperial empire and what we did in like Manchuria and Indonesia and just like so many countries. Yeah, so I do think Japan is very guilt-ridden, but they never say that they feel guilty about anything. So I do think that plays.
Is that among the older generation? Like, it sounds like the younger generation aren't really taught about these things. They don't really know or care what's happening.
It's weird because like if you go to protests, you would see a lot of older people. I think that's always been the same. Today as well. You know, I think that's a great thing that older people are interested in politics. But it's rarer to see younger people involved. The younger people are generally less interested, and I'm not sure why that is because. Well, it could be education, though, because in school, I don't really remember learning about, like, say, comfort women, like in Korea. I only really learned about it in depth in college. So I do think in terms of the education system here, again, it's biased. The narrative is always, oh, Japan was the victim. And I also think another important part is, like, the role of America. Because, like, without the states' involvement in this, things would be so drastically different. They're so integral to this issue. So I think they have a lot of sway in this. And, you know, the government doesn't represent the people. We all know this. But at the same time, if they speak for you, then they kind of do represent you. And you don't want to feel like your money's going to war, which it is.
Our protest today was to demand Itochu and the ties with Elbit systems.
Who are Itochu Corporation? What do they do?
Itochu Corporation, like I said, is one of the biggest trade companies in Japan, and their company is just literally everywhere. You think of Japan and you think of all of the convenience stores. Family Mart is one of the umbrella under Itochu as well.
What is their link to this current war happening?
Itochu Corporation, one of the subsidiaries that they have is Itochu Aviations. Back in 2023 March, made a deal with Elbit Systems.
So Itochu essentially sells weapons to...
So Itochu Aviation is the aircraft wing of Itochu. And they are the weapon dealers for Elbit Systems. And Elbit Systems are the biggest weapon company in Israel. And those weapons are killing children, people. Weapons that they've created are also tested in Gaza as well. So we are here to tell them to stop this deal. So we don't want to be part of this. We don't want to be part of the genocidal corporation. Israel continues to bomb Gaza, and it's doesn't seem to ever end. But I found through social media that these people are here and raising voices with Palestinians in Japan. I think that's one of the most crucial part of it. We can't speak for them. We need to stand with them. So
do you think Japanese people know what's going on in terms of like the Itochu Corporation and what's happening in terms of like the conflict? Do they know what's going on, or do you think not many people care?
At least 25,000 people signed this petition. So that many people know. And whether if this company will listen to them is really up to them. But we want to make it so that they can't ignore our voices. In terms of general public, I think a lot of it is reduced down to oh, war in the Middle East again. But that's not really the case. I think this is a symptom of all the aggression that's going on in the world. There are a lot of volunteers that are working so hard to translate the content that's in English or that's in Arabic into Japanese. So those accounts are a must follow. We need to be showing up more. We need to be educating each other a little bit more. But we're doing what we can do, and I think we're doing great.